Um, Welcome guys, and in today's session we'll be discussing about the submandibular region. So we'll be discussing about the submandibular region, focusing on the anatomy of the submandibular region. And as usual, my name is Boris Chegimid, and I'm the leader of study. So first, before I show you the objectives, the submandibular region, anatomically speaking, consists of both sub consists of both the digastric triangle, which is also known as the submandibular triangle, and also the submental triangle. So those two triangles, the submental and the submandibular triangles, are actually what is known as the submandibular region. Okay, so just as a recap, what are the boundaries of the submandibular triangle? So superiorly, you had the inferior border of, or the inferior margin of the mandible. Okay, then anterior and inferiorly, you had the anterior belly of the gastric there. Then posterior and inferiorly, you had the posterior belly of the gastric over there. And the superior boundary of the base was being completed by an imaginary line from the angle of the mandible to the mastoid process. Remember the posterior belly of the gastric forming the posterior inferior border touches to the medial surface of the mastoid process. So, what do I expect you to know by the end of this session? So, by the end of this session, I expect you to know the muscular planes of the submandibular region. So, we have four muscular planes of the submandibular region. I also expect you to know some important deviations in the submandibular region. We are not discuss the submandibular salivary gland at this point. I will make a separate video on that because its anatomy is important and I feel it will require a separate video. So let's start with the muscular planes of the submandibular region. You have four muscular planes and these are surgical planes. So the first muscular plane is formed by two muscles. One, you have this muscle, let me take a pointer. Have this muscle known as digastric. So remember, digastric has two bellies, the anterior belly and the posterior belly. The posterior belly came from the second pharyngeal arch, that is why it is innervated by the facial nerve, whereas the anterior belly came from the first pharyngeal arch, that is why it is innervated by mandibular nerve, which is essentially a branch from trigeminal nerve. Then stylohyoid, which also came from the second pharyngeal arch, also innervated by the facial nerve. Then the second muscular plane is mylohyoid, which came from the first pharyngeal arch, created by mandibular nerve from trigeminal. Then that muscular plane you have geniohyoid, HYOGLOSSUS, and styloglossus. And the fourth muscular plane is genioglossus. So you need to know these muscular planes. So ideally, these muscles are suprahyoid muscles. All these muscles are above the hyoid bone. Okay, so these are suprahyoid muscles, and you can see they are in four planes: first, second, third, and fourth. So the first one is the most superficial, and the fourth one is the deepest. Okay, so let's start with this first muscular plane. So for the first muscular plane, I said it is the digastric. So uh, so that is the anterior belly of the gastric there. That's the anterior belly of the gastric over there. Then that is the posterior belly of the gastric. Okay. So for the anterior belly of the gastric, it is attached to the digastric fossa on the inner part of the mandible, and then it meets the posterior belly via this intermediate tendon. This intermediate tendon is usually held down to the at the junction between the greater horn and the body of mandible. At that point, we have some fascial sling, which is derived from the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. So that is what usually holds the intermediate tendon in place. Okay, and then the other muscle, which is on the first muscular plane, is that muscle there. That is none other than your stylohyoid. You can see it is coming from the styloid process there, and it is attaching to the hyoid bone there. Okay. Then for the second muscular plane, so this image to your left, let me show you the first muscular plane, which is that as we alluded to, that is the anterior body of the gastric. So the second, you can see that is the most superficial after the skin, you have that. Then the second muscular plane is that muscle there, which is none other than that muscle is the same as that muscle there, which is your mylohyoid muscle, okay? Mylohyoid. For the mylohyoid muscle, uh, it forms it forms like the floor of the mouth, okay? It forms the floor of the mouth, something which is akin to the diaphragm, okay? So it is known as the uh, diaphragma oris, okay? The diaphragm of the mouth, okay? Diaphragma oris, okay? And there it is. That is the second muscular plane, only one muscle. Then moving on to the third muscular plane, you've seen this is where this is the second, and that is your mylohyoid. The third one will be that muscle there runs from the genoid, inferior genoid tubercle, uh, to the hyoid bone. That is none other than your geniohyoid there. Then another muscle in the second, or rather the third muscular plane is that muscle there, which comes from the hyoid bone to your tongue, HYOGLOSSUS there. HYOGLOSSUS is the key muscle of the submandibular region, so I need you to remember that. Then the third muscle in the third muscular plane is that muscle there, coming from the sphiral process towards the tongue, so styloglossus, okay? Those three, okay? So these two, uh, um, in fact, all of them are innervated by, uh, uh, for geniohyoid and, sorry, for, sorry, for geniohyoid, it is innervated by C1 fibers, which hitchhike hypoglossal nerve, okay? But for hyoglossus and styloglossus, those two are innervated by hypoglossal nerve itself, okay? So let's first also another view of the same. That is your styloglossus there, hyoglossus there, and geniohyoid there, okay? So those three muscles form the third muscular plane at that point. And let's have a detour and let me show you the muscles which comprise the styloid apparatus. So one is that muscle which is already pointed here, which is your styloglossus. The other one is that muscle there, which uh, which is T styloglossus, yeah, T styloglossus. And then we have that muscle there, which this one must be your stylohyoid, okay? So stylopharyngeus is more to the medial part, okay? It is more to the medial part, and I have listed it out. And we have two ligaments which complete the styloid apparatus, and that is your stylohyoid ligament and your stylomandibular ligament. So those three muscles and two ligaments form your styloid apparatus, okay? And then what's that? I know you know that. That is your posterior belly of the gastric muscle over there. Okay, so on to the fourth muscular plane. And for the fourth muscular plane, just one muscle, that muscle, easy to know. From the genio tubercle to the tongue, genioglossus, okay? Genioglossus. So genioglossus performs uh, uh the action of, the way I remember the action of genioglossus is, I just say it aims the tongue. So AIM. So it aims the tongue. So it moves the tongue anteriorly, inferiorly, and medially. Okay. So anteriorly, inferiorly, and medially. Okay. So protrusion of the tongue, but at the same time, it somehow moves it inferiorly and to the medial part. Okay. So you need to understand, especially this. It moves the tongue. So there are two of them. So it moves the half of the tongue to medially. So you need to understand this action so that when we get to if one has a region to the hypoglossal nucleus, how will they present? So that is the type of now questions you should be asking yourself. So next we have now, let us have an overview of those four muscular planes. The first one there will be that is the anterior body of the gastric that will form the first muscular plane together with uh, the stylohyoid, so digastric and stylohyoid. The second muscular plane will be formed by that muscle that is none other than your mylohyoid. for the third muscular plane, you'll have that muscle there. You can see it is coming from the geniotubercle there, from the mandible there to the hyoid bone. That is your geniohyoid, okay, geniohyoid, and also that muscle there which has been cut, this one and its counterpart on this other side, coming from the hyoid bone to going to the tongue. That is your hyoglossus, and also styloglossus, which has not been shown there. Those three form the third muscular plane, and finally the fourth muscular plane will be formed by that muscle which has been pointed there, which has been cut largely, and that is your genioglossus. Okay, so we are done with the muscular plane. So, what are some important relations in this region? So, I expect you to know the posterior relations of the posterior belly of the gastric. That one is important. I also expect you to know some relations of hyoglossus muscle, which is the key muscle of the submandibular region. And yeah, so let's start with the posterior relations of the posterior belly of the gastric. So, where is the posterior belly of the gastric? That one. That's your posterior belly of the gastric. So, what is underneath it? One, you can see that. And what's that? That is none other than your hypoglossal nerve. Okay, that's your hypoglossal nerve there. So that is one important relation to uh, the posterior belly of the gastric. In fact, you can see it first passes underneath it, and then it moves as it crosses anterior. It also moves underneath the somewhere near the termination of the posterior belly. Okay, you can see that is how it in fact gains access to the submandibular triangle, the gastric triangle. Okay, and then what else is posterior there? What's that? That nerve there, you can see it is moving to this muscle, and that muscle there is none other than your sternocleidomastoid muscle there, which has been cut and deflected. So which nerve is that? That must be a spinal accessory nerve. Okay, that must be a spinal accessory nerve there. So that is also another posterior relation. And then what else? You have that. See, that is hypoglossal, I believe. Yeah. Then what's that? That is your external carotid artery. You can see it is outside. It is external to the carotid sheath. Okay. So external carotid artery. You can see also it is anterior and medial too. So what will be in here will be your internal carotid artery and also vagus nerve. Okay. Vagus nerve and also internal jugular vein. Okay. So from this, I expect you to, by now you have seen that for the posterior relation of this posterior belly of the gastric, you have one, that is now your vagus. That is your vagus. Two, that nerve is the spinal accessory. And then that is your hypoglossal. So that is number 10, 11, 12. Okay, so those three cranial nerves are posterior to the posterior belly of the gastric. Okay, and then you also have that. So what is that? That is a branch from hypoglossal nerve, and you can see it is coming to this muscle, and that muscle is none other than your thyroid. So that is the nerve to thyroid. But actually, is it a branch of hypoglossal, or are they C1 fibers which hitchhiked the hypoglossal nerve? Actually, it is the latter. Okay, it's the C1 fibers which hitchhiked the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, and what is that? That one there is your superior root of the ansa cervicalis. Okay, the descends hypoglossy. Okay, descends hypoglossy. Okay, there it is. What's that? That is your external carotid. Okay, external carotid there, internal carotid there. That, what is that? That must be your facial artery. Okay, that's the facial artery which is coming from the external carotid artery there. Okay, and then some branches of facial artery. That one is the submental artery, and you can see that's the submental artery headed to the submental triangle. That is not the only branch of the facial artery in the submandibular region. It also gives you the glandular branches to this gland there, which is the submandibular gland. It also gives you tonsillar branches, which supply the palatine tonsils, and the ascending palatine artery, which supplies the palate, the soft palate. These are just some posterior relations. So from this, you can see that we have three vessels, three major vessels: internal jugular vein, external and internal carotid, and the last three cranial nerves, that is cranial nerve number 10, vagus, 11, spinal accessory, and 12, the hypoglossal nerve. And you can see, in fact, some superior and inferior relations. You can see that from the external carotid, the occipital artery actually uh, it runs along the inferior margin of the muscle, and the posterior auricular does the same, but this time along the superior border of that muscle. Okay, and then you can see that hypoglossal nerve actually crosses lingual artery. Okay, hypoglossal nerve crosses lingual artery. So let me go back here and show you. Yeah, this here is the hypoglossal nerve here, but this is the vessel at this point. This vessel being crossed by uh, lingual, sorry, not lingual, rather, that's the lingual artery being crossed by the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, let's look at the relations of the hyoglossus. So this is just an image from Bishram. I need you to know some superficial relations. So for the superficial relations, I need you to remember that there is a way they have been arranged. So from superior to inferior on the superficial surface of hyoglossus, you start with lingual nerve there, and then you go to the deep part of submandibular glands together with the Wharton's duct. Okay, you can see that's the Wharton's duct or the submandibular duct, and then you have the hypoglossal nerve there. Okay, and then hypoglossal nerve on either side, you have the vena comitante which accompany that nerve. Okay, but then we have some deep relations to the muscle, and for the deep relations, those structures are seen passing deep to the posterior border. So this is the posterior border of the muscle there, and in succession from superior to inferior, you see a glossopharyngeal nerve. You can see it is supplying the stylopharyngeus muscle there, and then the stylohyoid ligament there, and then the lingual artery. Okay, so lingual artery is separated from hypoglossal nerve by that muscle there, the hyoglossus. So see if you can see that on a cadaver. This is the submandibular region. This is a superficial dissection, and at this point, that is the anterior body of digastric. That is the mylohyoid. And what's that? That's the superficial part of the submandibular salivary gland. What's that? That must be the submental artery, which is a branch from that artery, which is the facial artery, and that's the facial. If that's the facial artery, uh, uh, this here, this one here, this is the facial vein. Okay, facial artery usually lie deep to the mandibular gland, but the vein lies superficial. Okay, so submandibular gland is found between the two. Okay, separates the facial artery from its vein. Whatever is pointed here, that's the marginal mandibular nerve, a branch from facial nerve on its way to supply the muscles of the mouth, such as the depressor anguli oris. And okay, so that is your facial artery, in fact, there, and this is the vein. Okay, and so the two are separated by the submandibular gland. So this is the same picture there, but this now is a deeper dissection. So that is your mylohyoid muscle. So this is the second muscular layer. So deep to the mylohyoid, I expect you to know that that muscle must be your hyoglossus. So on the hyoglossus, this is a superficial surface. So you need to see the three structures. You need to see one, the superior most is lingual, and then the Wharton's duct, submandibular duct, and then hypoglossal, and accompanying hypoglossal nerve is the vena comitante nervi hypoglossi, which actually uh, contribute to the formation of the lingual vein. Okay? And then speaking about the lingual structures, that's your lingual artery there, okay, and which is the same as that. So the lingual artery is divided into three parts by the hyoglossous muscle. So we have that part proximal to hyoglossus, and another part which is deep to hyoglossus, and that part which is distal to the anterior border of HYOGLOSSUS. Okay, so that nerve now, if this is uh, uh, if that is lingual artery, that nerve which is crossing it is none other than the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, you need to remember that relation. Okay, and in fact, which muscle is that? That's your thyroid. Okay, if that is your thyroid, what is that? That is the nerve to thyroid, which consists of C1 fibers, which hitchhiked the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, so that's it, guys. I hope the session was fruitful, and do subscribe for more of anatomy and related content. Thank you.